You know, ladies and gentlemen, what's kind of wild is on a modern day smartphone, especially an Android phone, you too can play Grand Theft Auto 5 at around like medium to high settings at a playable frame rate. Now, it might look like it's an annoying way to play the game, especially with the touch controls, but you know what? This is just the freedom to do whatever it is that you want. Plus, you can always connect a controller to your phone. Now, why am I talking about this specifically? It's because I had to download an app that let me emulate Windows or Wine underneath my actual Android phone so I could play PC games right here. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, would I be doing this normally on a day-to-day basis? Probably not, but I like to have the option. Now, I switched to Android like weeks ago, and you know, one of the big things that I said about this was like, I want a phone where like, if I spend over $1,000 to buy a product, I want to be able to own that product. One of the problems with iPhones is that they're just baby phones. You know, at the end of the day, Apple basically tells you what you can put and not put on it. So basically, you spend all this money, and Apple decides what applications you get to run. Now, sure, you might be like, Moody, you could jailbreak your phone or do this and that. What if I don't want to go through that? What if I just want to be able to install a goddamn application? Android used to be great. Now they're taking that feature away. You know, Google had this motto back in the day called "Don't be evil." And I feel like all Google is kind of doing now is becoming pure fucking evil. So let me explain what's been going on. So recently, like, Google just put out this thing, a new layer for security for certified Android devices. Now, certified basically means that, you know, any Android device, I guess you're picking up in a store. So your Samsung devices, your Google Pixels, LGs, whatever. Well, I don't even think LG makes phones, but you get the idea, right? Your certified Android phone. So what they basically said is apparently their recent analysis found that over 50 times more malware comes from the internet sideloaded sources than applications on the Google Play Store. So I just want you to remember, okay, this is the same company that's talking about your privacy, your security, your safety, when at the same time on the Chrome Web Store, they have free VPN 1, free VPN for Chrome. Now, this is an application that apparently 100,000 users have just downloaded. And if you actually look at some of the allegations, Koi Security did a good write-up where they said that apparently this extension serves as a free VPN that apparently will just grab information. So you can see in the code right here that they provided, this JavaScript. So again, this document ready state or document, interactive, complete, yada, yada, yada. It will do an action called capture viewport. So basically they're just capturing allegedly screenshots of the user's like work and sending it over. So whether, you put in a password, you put in your credit card numbers, the 3 goofy numbers on the back, expiration date, you send that over, they might have access to that information. They might be grabbing your info. So again, I don't want to just make this, the big VPN app. I haven't truly examined this myself, so I'm not going to completely, abide by the allegations. But generally, when you have allegations like this, as a company, Google, if you care about your users, you should probably delist this application. It still exists to this day. So I don't want to fucking hear for a goddamn second that Google gives a shit about the users when they themselves are just peddling dog shit in their own stores. So right over here, they said that what they're going to do is something called developer verification. So starting next year, Android will require every app to be registered by a verified developer in order to be installed by users on certified Android devices. That creates crucial accountability, making it much harder for malicious actors to quickly distribute a harmful app. Think of it like an ID check at an airport. They make it sound so fucking annoying. Yeah, what I love, right? Going to the fucking airports, going into the lines. Ooh, having them stick flashlights up my ass. Sir, you can't bring that water bottle. You can't. Yeah, that's really a fun experience. Here's the big difference, Google, okay? My phone is not like the fucking Pearson International Airport, okay? It is a product I bought, okay? It is my device. If I want to install whatever the fuck it is that I want on my phone, I should be allowed to do that, okay? That is my God-given right to install whatever it is that I needed to. And honestly, I do install a lot of applications that aren't in the App Store. I would say a good 50% of the stuff on my phone didn't come from the Play Store. It's just stuff that I downloaded off GitHub and whatnot. Now, I'm just going to be completely real here. I think this is more to do with applications Google doesn't like than protecting the users. So for instance, let's say that you're somebody in the emulator space and you want to run a bunch of emulators on your phone. So things like PS2, PS3 emulators, DS emulators, yada, yada, yada. I don't think some of those developers might get verified status. And let's say that they do, okay? I wonder just how many applications are going to be delisted. Emulators like Drastic, where you can play DS games on your phone. I don't even think that's an active application. I don't even think the developer really cares about being there. I could only imagine what will happen if that gets completely removed from the entire matrix here. So what they said over here, to be clear, developers still have the same freedom to distribute their apps directly through sideloading or use any app store they prefer. Now, when they say we believe this is how an open system should work, they're completely ignoring the fact that unless those developers aren't verified, which you have to go through their verification process, that is going to absolutely hamper people from installing stuff that Google doesn't approve of. So what are the kind of applications that I don't think will bypass Google's authorized developers? Is probably stuff like YouTube, which are actually applications that include ad blocking, background playback, pinch to zoom. Now, I don't endorse this product by any imagination, because obviously I imagine this is against YouTube's terms of services. Even they will agree and say that this is probably against YouTube's terms and services. But a lot of people install applications like this for various social media services that are so enshittified that having tools like this may lead to a better user experience. Instead of, some people just paying money to get a slightly better user experience, some people just revert back to how YouTube or a lot of sites kind of used to be, right? So I don't think this is going to necessarily be okay. I also don't think a lot of applications like Winlator, which I used to run like Grand Theft Auto 5 on my phone, is going to be allowed on the actual App Store. In fact, I don't even see that on the Play Store itself. And even then, I had to go through certain other forks of the emulator, which are made by totally different developers. So unless these developers all get together and start verifying themselves, which comes with its own hurdles, this is actually the death of real freedom on our actual smartphones. At this point, I might as well just fucking go back to an iPhone. I might as well consider getting a goddamn Linux phone at this point, okay? Because if this is the last bastion of real freedom, and I might as well own it, dude. Now, I don't want to jump into conspiracy theories, but I want you guys to kind of understand what's going through my mind here. I think for censorship being such a huge topic of discussion these days, and that's kind of where our world seems to be headed with all these new laws, I think that frameworks like what Google is pushing with these verified developers almost feels like a way for, them to put in limitations into our device at that OS level. To the point where, applications like Signal, for instance, and I'm not saying this application you can't download on Google Play, you absolutely can right now. But there are parts of the world where you need to download the APK file for this directly because they just need access to this application. Now imagine if all of a sudden something went down with the security of this application, or just talks broke down and maybe this wasn't allowed to be installed on modern devices. I almost feel this is a Trojan horse to limit what kind of applications we can have on our phones. Applications that might be important to keep our privacy, to keep things like our encryption. When the government and all these tech agencies are so after us to stop, us from, having a little bit of privacy, I almost feel like controlling exactly what applications can go on your devices, through this verified, trusted developer layer is something that needs to be addressed. Okay, if Android is making sideloading a issue, this needs to be discussed about more. And honestly, it's not even just an Android issue. I think for iPhone users, you should have the ability to install whatever you want, regardless of where you live. I think what I'm seeing here is sort of the entry point, that Trojan horse. They're going to say it's meant for your security, but I feel it's just meant to take away the bit of freedom that you have, especially on a device that you actually own yourself. What is Google actually doing? It's crazy to think that this is the kind of stuff that you hear about where if you ever read this one article here, every time in Spain, when cops see a Google Pixel, they think it's a drug dealer. And a lot of it comes out to the fact that apparently people who buy Google Pixels always install things like Graphene OS, which is a private secure operating system that law enforcement hates because ultimately it secures the shit out of your phone, okay? It protects you from prying eyes. And I think it's totally cool that you do this. Now, from what I understand, this is the only real workaround of this bullshit so far, like installing a completely separate operating system that doesn't abide by the fucking bullshit rules that Google likes to invoke onto people. But the problem with things like Graphene OS is, let's say you buy like a Samsung phone, which are actually pretty locked down when it comes to modifying the OS. this is something that isn't going to be practical here. And let's say that even if you could do it, I used to own like Samsung Galaxy devices, Samsung Notes, where I installed custom operating systems. And when you trip something called Knox on a Samsung phone, which is basically its security framework, you lose access to things like, Samsung Pay, a bunch of other security features that you actually paid for on your device that you lose because all you wanted to do was simply gain some more privacy onto your system. And again, it's not something that I agree with, but these are the things that you're going into. Google is literally ruining what, in my opinion, makes Android Android. It allows users to customize their device. Android is like buying a fucking actual like computer that you can do whatever it is that you wanted. Apple is like buying an incredibly locked down device that is pretty good, but ultimately it does have its limitations and you can't go around it. I want you to kind of imagine it like this. Imagine for a second, you're using Windows, right? And all of a sudden, Windows updates its operating system and says, hey guys, by the way, you can't just run any application you want willy-nilly. It has to be approved by us in this whitelist that we've made. That would probably piss you off, okay? I'm sure for a lot of you guys out there, some of you that may even get your software for unreputable sources, you might be looking at that and going, wow, I don't want a company controlling what it is that I do. But that's effectively what we've got with our smartphones now. Probably one of the freest smartphones is being fucking ruined because Google wants to protect its user base. And I honestly think it comes down to Google noticing that all these other applications exist that provide ad blocking functionality, applications that they probably see hurting their bottom line. And I don't think it's just to protect the user. If you want to protect the user, you should just educate them. That's why I have my channel where I upload tons of videos where I talk about how to just protect yourself. And one of the simplest ways you can protect yourself and the people around you is just not install shady applications to your phone. Don't download the free VPN service. Don't download the random shady application without truly verifying it first. And I guarantee you, your Android phone will be just fine. Now, in a modern Android smartphone, right, if you actually just see the level of protections they have, you can't even install applications from the get-go as long as you don't turn off features like auto blocker. Now, at least on this Samsung device, this feature right here prevents me, if I have this enabled, which is always enabled by default, it'll prevent applications like APKs from being installed, block commands by, USB cables, block malware images and messaging apps. It does a strong layer of protections right from the get-go. You as a user, if you want to install all the extra stuff on your phone, have to consciously turn this shit off, give a fingerprint sometimes, and then get access to it. So the fact that Google is jumping in for our safety and security, even though these features are already present as they are, just shows me that there's probably something else down the road that they're thinking of. Or at least that's just where my conspiracy mind is going to. Don't listen to the bullshit Google is feeding you about, if you leave our app store, 50 times more danger approaches you. You know what? Honestly, you should probably clean up your own house first before telling the entire world how to fucking regulate their shit. I'm not somebody that likes to engage with Google when it comes to my phone. That's why, I try to always go out of their services, or at least try to decouple myself as much as I can. But when Google is literally sitting at the core of this operating system and telling me what I can and cannot install, that needs to change. I mean, it's fucking stupid, man. Like, it really is just stupid. It's actual dumb behavior. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to kind of yap about this because one of the only reasons I switched over might not even be a reason any longer. I am out.